Hi, this is Vicki from Grandma B's Junk Journals. Thanks for stopping by my channel. Today I'm going to do a flip through of a book, a junk journal that I just finished for a returning customer. She asked me to create this junk journal for her niece's birthday, and this book, this journal is created from a 1957 book that I just did a haul for. I think it was last week. I had purchased this and 3 others, different dates in the 50s, and I think I've got one in 40s. Anyways, I got these at an antique shop, and so she asked if I would create one. I've made lots of journals for her, and so I said, sure. I just finished it, so I have the other 3 I will be working on, but I did want to do a flip through so that she can see it prior to purchasing and maybe inspire some of the rest of you. So anyways, I kept the cover as is, and this is an absolutely beautiful book. It is embossed. It's gorgeous. I mean, it's just like brand new condition. I've closed it with some vintage lace. Now, the special thing about this junk journal is every single thing in here is either vintage or antique. I've got, there is a banknote that is 1889. So the oldest item in here is 1889, and then it's up through, the book is 1957. So there's nothing older than, or beyond that. So it's either vintage or antique. So I've been wanting to build my stash so that I can start making some of these journals that are just vintage and antique, no printables, nothing new in it. And I'm finally at the point where my stash is big enough where I can start making some of these. So I'm really excited about that. Anyways, I've just closed this one with some vintage lace, and I'll just do a quick flip through. So the front and back cover and the first couple of pages, they're just intact. And I have added, this is one of my pockets that I created with, now this pocket, I tea-dyed that and used some stencils. This is a vintage photograph. Both of these are 1940s. And then behind it is some vintage lace. This image here is from an 1800s catalog. I think 1880s, somewhere around that time. It's very brittle, so I couldn't include the whole page, but I did cut out this image and I glued it onto the vintage lace and some trim here. There's all of the trimming and the lace, it's all vintage. So anyways, there are some of the original pages from the book. This is early 1900s pattern. It's a pattern envelope that I cut and made into pages. Some of the pages are pretty, you need to be careful, I will say. This one, it is old, but with some gentle handling, I think it should be just fine. This is from the book, 1957. And so what this book is, it's a book that's compiled of magazines, sunshine magazines. And so this page right here is like the beginning section in the book of August 1957. So you'll see as I flip through that there's different months of the year. And then I just made these into pockets. And then in each pocket, I've included some kind of vintage or antique magazine page. So this is from a Norman Rockwell book, actually. So I've just slid that into the pocket here. Actually, I'll put it this way. And the back of it is September 1957. And this is just part of this book, another page. And then I made a pocket from a vintage book page. And there is a photograph, and then a little card here with the writing in it. And there's lots of spots for, excuse me, for journaling as well as photos. And here's a super cute picture of a baby and some trim. Now, I did not, there's so many different pages in here with so many different dates. So like I said, the dates range from the late 1800s to the 1950s. And here's another card. There's vintage stationery, vintage book pages. This is a magazine page. This was a card. Open that up. There's the envelope. Open that up. Lots of journaling spots there. And then this. So lots of writing space. This is a hand-dyed vintage doily. Ledger. This one is April 1957. This came from the book. This right here is a handmade doily. I got a box of these from an auction, and I think I had almost 100 of these. I think because they're all labeled and they're different people's names and different states. So I think it might have been like some kind of a challenge from, that they would send their hand crocheted, or I think that's crochet, to this person. And she just had a big collection of them. And I think there was just about maybe 97, almost 100 different kinds of these little things. And they're all stapled to a card. And then I just put them in a sleeve to keep them safe and nice. And then you'll see that this one is from Ohio, but they're from all over the nation. So that was a great auction find. So I will definitely be adding these to my journals. I'm very happy about that. I will probably add some of these into my website as well, just because there's no way that I can possibly use, 97 or 100 of these. So, or if you see that, if you think you might want some, just drop me a note on my website and I can get some on there for you too. So, January 1957, again, that's from this book. This is just from a vintage book. The person who wanted this book said that her niece really loves like vintage women. So I tried to add some of those throughout the book. Even though this is a 1957 book, I kind of went across, across the ages and tried to add some of those in as well. This is just a book page that I have added. Ledger, stationery. This is another book page. And this is the back of that pattern. And then I've just added some vintage lace in a few different spots where I needed to kind of, cover up this a little bit. And then in this pocket, this one is from a magazine. Love this. This is Better Homes and Garden. Now you could cut these big papers out. You could make clusters and tags. You could decorate your pages. Lots of different things, or just keep them in there to share. And here is a vintage postcard. And I found these at an antique shop. I've got several of these, and so I added one in here. I think that was a 1940. I looked that up online, and I'm thinking that's what that was. And a pattern, and another book page from a different book. It was from a vintage magazine. This is from a vintage cookbook. This is from an old map. And here we have an envelope. And inside there's a vintage card with envelope. And I love this card. Now, if you wanted to do some journaling, you could cut the top of this to split it, and then that would give you some pages. And then this is another one of those 1800s images from that magazine that I cut out, and I've glued it on here. I've added some lace and a vintage stamp there. And again, you could cut across here and open this up, and that would give you some more pages there. I did not count the pages in this journal. There's a lot. There's 3 signatures that I, they're not sewn in. Well, I guess they are sewn in. It's just a different way. The sewing is on the inside, and then this is intact here. I'm just trying to flip through here for you. There's just lots and lots of pages, lots of different kinds of magazines, different kinds of books. This is from a vintage bird wildlife, American bird wildlife. I'm not for sure exactly what the name of it is, but made it into a tag. And then there was a vintage receipt that I just sewed that together. You can move that around. And then here's another one from the book, June 1957. And this is from 1921, I think, 1921 magazine. And she wanted kind of the vintage Victorian women in this book, and I came across that in my magazine, and I just thought, oh, I'll just add that. She might appreciate that. And then here's some more of those women. Very cool gloves, 98 cents, $1.49. Sears has it. Sears has everything. And this is making basic pattern here. Another magazine page. I just love the pictures in these magazines. This one was from a 1950s wedding. It was a wedding book from this person. It came from an auction, and it was a memory book from this couple's wedding. And in the back of it, there was a couple of empty sheets. So I went ahead and took those out and then added them because I thought that would be great journaling spots. And this is early 1900s. I'm not for sure the date on this, but it was a craft, ordering crafts. And here's a beautiful vintage card, and there was some stationery with it. So I just put those right together. And then on the back, to cover the writing, I've added another vintage card here that opens up. And then just covered this up for some journaling. And this is another old magazine. On the other side of that wedding page. Just so much fun in here. I just love all of this old. This right here, I got a box of these in an auction, at an auction, and I believe, and I don't know the name of, I don't know what they call them. nameplates maybe for books. But that's what I had a whole box of these, and you glue them on the front of the book, and it just says my book, and then you would probably write your name here, so you would know who the owner of that book was. I've seen these at antique shops, and I just happened to get my hands on a box of them, so I thought I would add that to this. This is a vintage envelope that went with that stationery, and I've just sewed that in, so there's a nice pocket there. And then here's another card. It's a vintage card that you can open up and journal on. And then another vintage postcard. This is, actually, I was just there last week, Mackinac Bridge of Michigan. It connects the upper and the lower peninsula together, and I went right over that just a few days ago. And this, I was so pleased to get this. 1894, November 15th, 1894, and this, I've got this at an antique shop in Ohio, and I was able to purchase several of these. So I will be adding one each into, like I said, I have 3 more of these journals like this, or these books that I'm going to make into journals. So I have 3 more, and I will be adding this 1894. The others are 1800s as well. And so anyways, just a great piece of history right there. Little bank note. Here is a little stationery card. And then we are at the back of the book. So these are the back couple of pages. This is a pocket right here that I made with the December page of the book. So this is a nice pocket. And then in the back, I have a vintage card, greeting card that I made into a pocket and took 2 pages from the book and sewed them up and made them into bookmarks. And then I've just put them in the back here. I left this blank in case whoever gets the book, if she wants to put a photo or journaling or, you know, one of her own embellishments. And then with that, with the book is going to come this little packet of goodies. There's a bunch of pages from the original book that I didn't use that I thought would be great for, you know, making tags or your own ephemera. And I have 3 vintage journaling cards. They're actually playing cards, but you can make them into tags or pockets or whatever you wanted. But like I said, she liked the vintage ladies, so I wanted to make sure I added those. Here's another stationery page and envelope. This is a piece of ephemera that I made. You can make it into a journal. This could be your front cover. The only thing that is not vintage on this, I see, well, this brown is just a piece of brown paper. Actually, I think the rest this right here, this flower, I don't think this flower is. I think that was just a piece of ephemera that I cut, but everything else is. But regardless, you could actually use this to make your own, you know, another journal, or use it in a signature. And then the rest is like pages of magazines. This is a little, she liked the Victorian ladies, so I found this was in an antique store. So I'm adding this little booklet, some magazines. This is a 1957 letter. I have not read any of the letters that I got from an auction because I got a ton of them. I am adding these into some of my journals. So I don't know what they say, but they were during wartime, and they were all from a family. So they're old. They're 1957. Some of the paper, the tissue that was in that pattern, a lot of the pages from this book that I cut out, and some more magazine pages, children's book pages, and then this, which would be beautiful on the front cover of a journal. So anyways, I'm going to add this little packet with the journal. So there you go. Thank you for coming along on this flip through, and I hope I've inspired you a little bit and gave you some ideas on your own journals. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.